G'day, my name is Dainsy and I have a massive debt to pay. One that I have quite shamefully carried for quite some time. But let me get back to that later. This story begins with this single pallet. Not just any pallet though, the heaviest standard pallet that I have ever found. And the only plan I have for this pallet was to turn it into something, so stick with me. As I roll this heavy beast of a thing and start to clean it up, I am quite hopeful it'll be a nice score of various species of hardiest as fuck areas. And not just beams of pine covered in dirt. So basically, the plan is, there is no plan, so stick with me. I need to bust this pallet down and let it dry. I had no means of weighing this thing in its natural habitat full form, plus it was very wet. So before I blasted out all of the nails, I weighed all of the pallet pieces and discovered why I nearly busted my poo-poo valve loading this thing into the pallet mobile. It was 42 kilos. 42 kilos! And for the Yanks watching, that is a lot of pounds. A lot. It does not take me long to realise I am indeed going to be playing with 100% hardy as fuck areas. The exact species are yet to reveal themselves though. Now, I want to try and use as much of this pallet as possible in this one project. However, the nails in the hardwood are very rusty and are mostly breaking off. Previous experience tells me that digging them out is not going to be worth the effort. You can't save them all. Saying that, a couple of these stretches are clear of the nails on one side, so the metal detector tells me. So I do a little math and science and decide to take a calculated risk. I figure nails are only a problem if I don't know that they are there. So I'm going to clean and square up the nail-free side, then run these stretches through my brand new table saw blades. What could possibly go wrong? The gamble paid off, and I have now revealed all the beautiful timber I'm going to be working with. It is two distinct variants of hardiest as fuck areas, which is most likely the red stuff and the brown stuff. Quick pause so I can introduce a few new characters. This is Dexter. He owns a skate shop. Spoiler alert, my massive debt is with him. More on Dexter later. And this is Ken. Ken makes fishing lures out of recycled skateboards. A little while back, Ken contacted me and offered up all of his noses, tails and hardware sections of the skateboards. He likes to use the nice flat bit in the middle. Safe to say, I was very happy to take those off his hands, which I've stored them away until this in the future project. Okay, back to the pallet and the plan there is no plan. As I don't have a huge amount of stock, my brain starts leaning towards a bench of some sort, and some sort of slatted bench, so I can stretch this stock as far as possible. However, I also like the side grain and the mix of colours that the pallet wood normally offers up. So I decide to laminate the different thickness boards together that will then give me the chunkier slats, which are more comfortable on the freckle, whilst still being aesthetically pleasing. Long story short, I've ended up with this pile of square dressed pallet wood. Let's call them rails, or slats, for the bench. As I cleaned up the pallet wood, it did become obvious that I am going to need other materials to make this bench. Now, I did not just want to make a bench. I wanted to make a piece of furniture, the type that people refer to as a piece. Oh, that's a nice piece. But also, in my brain, I just wanted to get creative, have some fun, and make a piece of art. So if it is never to referred to as a nice piece of furniture, then maybe it would be referred to as a piece of art. And failing both of those, I guess it will be referred to as a piece of shit. Alrighty then, back to the bench. I know I want to bling this thing up with some skateboards, and as they are always the finite resource, I opt for the less desirable parts of the skateboards, the hardware section with all the holes, and I'm going to stretch those as far as possible in two ways. The first way is to ask my mate Dan from Riverside Woodworks to help me out. Because I have no regrets selling my bandsaw, I asked him to slice up the boards down the middle so I can double all of my stock. The plan will be to create some sort of mosaic with all the cool colours, the art and the carnage of the well-used undersides of the skateboards. The second way I'm going to stretch the skateboards is to laminate a very small allowance of skateboard together because I want to see all the coloured ply, the side grain. That is the true beauty of using recycled skateboards. and then create as many veneers as possible to stretch those colours even further. Alright, before we get too much further, let me tell you about my massive debt. Many years ago, I went into a surf skate shop. I met Dexter, we made some chit chat, and kindly asked him if he had any broken skateboards he would be willing to give me. He said, "Yeah man, no problem. Would you just mind making me something cool, like a keyring bottle opener? That'd be rad." I said, "Of course mate, no problem." I took the boards home, made some stock, produced some blanks for bottle openers. I had Dale from Delbasid Timbers turn some bottle openers so we could sell a few, make a few bucks at the markets. I forgot to tell Dale, put a couple of those bottle openers aside for Dexter. Dale went to the markets, sold all of the bottle openers in about 5 seconds flat.
Oops, sorry.
Anyway, no big deal. We will whip up some more next time we play with some skateboards. Long story short, a couple of years later, of forgetting, procrastinating, getting distracted with all sorts of other things, I'm embarrassed to say that I've still not been back into the skate shop to hand over a few keyrings. Which brings me to this bench. What if I make Dexter a bench because a keyring or bottle opener is simply not going to cut it? I need to restore the woodworker-skateboarder relationship. One thing I do know now when it comes to woodwork and skateboards is that whenever you show any video of woodwork with skateboards, someone is going to ask, "Where did you get the skateboards?" And sadly, that is how they ask. I know it's in text, but that's how it feels to me. No intro, no manners, no lube. They just want the answer. Well, the answer is skateboard shops. Okay? But if you're anything like me, you know it is not that simple. I find it very hard to simply ask for free shit, especially when I don't know the person, when I have nothing to offer in return. When I first met Dexter, I just happened to be in the shop doing some Christmas shopping. Tip 1, go and spend some money in the skate shop before you ask for skateboard. Anyway, I was at the counter and the topic of skaters frequently breaking skateboards came up. So I took a little punt and asked if he had any. I'm a woodworker, blah, blah, blah. You know how the rest goes. And I got my first recycled broken skateboards stock. That is the plan and the backstory. Back to the bench. As my shed has evolved over time, a few machines have come and gone with no regrets because space is of a premium here. I accepted this CNC and it is amazing, by the way. I did a couple of videos for CNC 3D, etc, etc. What I wasn't expecting, however, was firstly how much I'd enjoy incorporating the CNC into my workflow, but secondly and more importantly, the customer assistance and service I received from Dave and the team at CNC 3D. So this is not a paid plug. It is a plug that I want to give to get as many eyeballs on this fantastic Aussie business who have done all the hard work and they have a great product they ship worldwide. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. What I do want to do is try and have the CNC make at least one part of most of my projects from now on. Then it justifies all the real estate that I have allocated to it here in the shed with no regrets. These bench leg / rail parts will be done by the CNC. I have no skills with SketchUp, but what I can do is join pieces of digital shapes to other pieces of digital shapes to create one very one-of-a-kind design for this piece. This piece of. I hope you just didn't say shit. I have used the CNC to cut 2 of all of the pieces so I can have a very chunky frame. It also let me simply flip my bench rails and then extend the bench rails to the desired length. All I had to do then was laminate in the remaining pieces, line up the little doodads, and then use a flush trim router to clean everything up, which worked a treat. And before I decided on the final length, I did have to see how far I could stretch the pallet wood stock, and also carry out some sophisticated gluteus maximus testing and make sure the arse end of a human would actually be comfortable sitting on the slats in that orientation. I also had a quick look at this pallet wood orientation extravaganza, but decided that it would be for a future project. But it does look cool. The dodgy plywood box I've salvaged is not ideal for the intricate innie and outie castle-like bench slat holsters. There was a lot of chip out carnage, so I've had to basically round over all of those fingers by hand with a rasp, and the very coarse Shinto made pretty quick work of that, and it also made me feel good on the inside. The second leg of this bench is going to be a little piece of art in itself. And it is going to be a cube made from the same salvage Dodgeosaurus plywood I got from work. I decided to go for a full 45-degree beveled box, which in hindsight will prove pretty unnecessary, but what it did do was let me get a little bit more woodworky and use my brain and play around with the new table saw and all its bits and pieces. Just so you know, I have a partnership with Timbercon here in Australia. They provided me with the table saw, and how I pay them back is by telling you all about it. But what you need to do is head over to their Timbercon YouTube channel if you want to see all those videos. Okay, the CNC does produce a little waste with all the offcuts, so I salvage as much of the dodgy ply as possible for the rest of the framework. Now, before I get carried away blinging this bench up, I wanted to do a quick dry assembly to see if my idea is actually going to work and look somewhat rad, because rad is a prerequisite. As I've said, the skateboards are a finite resource, and I think I need more surface area to be skateboards. One part of the board that is not really recycled enough is the grip tape. So a while back I hit up Damo from Little Warrior Shields to save me a few pieces of grip tape, as I had discarded all mine in my last batch, sadly. So meet Damo. He makes foam warrior shields and helmets for very sick children in hospital. It makes them stronger, of course. He has made over 300 shields and 50 helmets for sick kids all around Australia. Now that is a lot of smiles on a lot of dials. So why don't you go and give Damo a follow on Instagram, fire him up, and get him making some more. Okay, the grip tape. Let's start with the finished product, which is these little tiles. Piece of ply, grip tape. Pretty simple concept, right? Now, let's just say, because I had no plan for the grip tape, other than extending surface area in some way, I went through this entire ridiculous routine of epoxy, vacuum bags, presses, more epoxy, table sawing, rasping, cross-cutting, edge smoothing, basically a lot of fluffing around, when a pair of scissors and a little bit of glue would have done the job. Anywho, tiles covered in grip tape. Getting into the weeds now of joining pieces of wood to other pieces of wood, I have got my Shonka plywood that definitely needs a little turd polishing session done to bring it to life. I'm going to veneer the skateboard laminations all over the base frame. I sliced up one of the blocks and I quickly realised it was probably a little bit too thick, so I went a little bit thicker, and although more skateboards ends up as sawdust, I have more skateboard veneer. So less skateboards equals more skateboards to the power of rad. And from there, I then figure that small square tiles will probably be the best to stretch the stock as far as possible over this very odd shape. In hindsight, and possibly with better quality ply, if I were ever to do something like this again, I would probably laminate all of my veneers onto the ply first and then do the cuts on the CNC with a nice sharp bit. I'm sure I could have saved a fair bit of time, but again, the skateboards are a finite resource and I did not want to risk any stock on an unproven concept. Plus, the enjoyment of working this all out as I go is all part of the fun for me. I also shouted myself a brand new flush trim router bit. I did not want to get this far and have bits of skateboard getting torn away from the ply. With most of the ply laminated, it was now just a case of filling in the gaps one little piece of art at a time until the entire faces were covered in sadness. What? That's not right. Radness. Covered in radness. Now, whether you're going to laminate first and then cut, or cut and then laminate, just remember that there is nothing a Shinto rasp or a belt sander can't fix. Next step is the box, which is effectively the second leg of the bench, but also an extension for more arse space when you are trying on your new skater shoes. This section I'll be needing the tiles that both Damo and Dan helped me produce. I'll have more skateboard in total. The raw face of the boards, the artwork, the carnage, the colours, the story of many a person spudding in, scraping a knee or pulling off a fully sick trick, and also the grip tape and any other cool skateboard stories that could possibly go with that. Anywho, again, the skateboards are the finite resource, and I have managed to cover this entire box with a pretty economical amount of skateboards with the usual routine of masking tape, tight bond, and my vacuum bag. With the tiles now laminated onto all sides of the box, I had to come up with a way to trim off all the edges with the matching 45 bevel of the ply. Otherwise, the box would no longer fit together. So I fluffed around and I eventually came up with this idea. I was quite chuffed with myself and it worked a treat. Later on, I'll show you that it was a massive waste of time. But all good. All part of the make shit up as you go routine that has been this project. Feeling pretty chuffed with myself as the box once again comes together to form a box. I sneak in a few Easter eggs of maker stickers who have helped me out and stand back and admire my piece so far. I am a little worried though. My dad was visiting and I show him my progress, and with a puzzled look on his face, he says, "It looks like something that I'd make." And trust me, that is not a compliment. So I say, "Dad, stick with me." Alrighty, Dad, thanks for sticking with me. Back to the pallets, and I have realised I am a fair handful of slats short. Lucky for me, I have myself a Dave Kelly, and he recently hooked me up with this massive chunk of spotty gum, which should give me all that I now need to finish off the slats for the bench. And all the slats need a round over, and as I have not yet re-established a router table, I have to do it all by hand. I want a very aggressive, let's call it a bullnose roundover on all the edges of the bench. So I rigged up this routine to round over all the end grain in one go, nice and neat with no tear out. How good is rounding over Aussie hardwood? I splashed out and purchased some dyed maple veneer. If you can't get skateboards, you can buy this stuff. It is what they make skateboards with. I want to really bling this frame by veneering all the plywood with different colours because, you know, art. But also to cover over the dodgy plywood, which although its construction is a salute to all those kids who have ever made a ply, skateboard ramp or half pipe, it really does need to be hidden on this particular piece. It is also going to hide all of the pocket holes, which lets me have a little screw insurance policy on each of these slats. If someone were to get a little bit rough on the bench and there is only a tiny bit of gluing surface joining those pieces of wood to the other pieces of wood. Right, back to the box. I was not happy with the jagged edges that the uneven beveled skateboard has created. So I'm going to carefully rip off a mega chamfer all around the box, which will then let me apply some more coloured veneer to those edges, somewhat framing the mosaic, making it much, much radder and less sadder. Getting near the end now, and I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, as I know I've got to front up to Dexter at the skate shop soon, and I hope I have done enough to undo my oversight in not paying back my massive debt. But I must keep going. The brain strain is done now. It is merely a case of bringing it all together, time to assemble the major components, more veneering as I go, snats need to be glued and screwed, and of course more veneering, sanding, etc. I checked out the social media of Dexter's skate shop and I read that there is a half pipe in store, which takes me back to one of my biggest childhood regrets. I never built up the stones to drop in on a half pipe. I was a very ordinary skateboarder. In fact, I was shit, and I will actually never refer to myself as a skateboarder. I did wonder though if I should take the plunge and have a crack on the half pipe. No way. I'm 44 years old. The likelihood of me spudding in, breaking my face, not being able to work, and not be able to pay the mortgage quickly booted that idea out of my head. Risk assessment complete. What I did ponder in my head though, and honestly hoped for, was what if this bench is parked up next to the half pipe? And what if some kid does a massive rail slide across it? Hence the bullnose roundover on the pallet wood, and why I have mega chamfered the box as well and smother it in epoxy. Plus, it looks rad and shiny. While that's going on, let me have a quick shout out to these blokes. Sam from Gumtree Hill Woodworks and James from FIXIT Fingers. Sam is kicking off his channel again and James is also kicking on. However, both have great / very important videos coming up or are out soon or now. And of course, and let's not forget about Jesper Makes. He has plenty to watch on his channel and he is going to make you feel good on the inside every time. For the finishing touch, I want to put a couple of my Dainer made coins on the bench. This is something that I've never done, but from now on I want to because, you know, I want my projects to be appropriately referred to as a piece. And because branding, of course. Alrighty, I'm loaded up, I'm ready to go. I have the debt payment in this bag here. So, see how I go. I'm actually a little bit nervous. So off I go, quietly shitting myself to reintroduce myself to Dexter. And if you are hoping or expecting to see the grand surprise moment of when I reveal the bench to Dexter, well, that is not going to happen. This moment was about re-establishing the relationship between woodworker and skateboarder. And it would have felt completely weird. And to be honest, very, very awkward. So, you'll have to trust me that it went exactly as expected. And Dexter said the words I so desperately needed to hear when I showed him the photos of this bench and offered it to him. Which is, yeah man, that is fully sick. It would look wicked in the shop. Would you like some coin? No, I don't want some coin. But with my debt paid and relations restored, if you have any broken skateboards lying around the shop, then please let me know. And Dexter said, of course, man. And we lolled. Okay? Catch you later. Alrighty, well, that went pretty good. Okay, faith restored, debt paid. Check it out. You just happen to have this really cool skateboard with this nice art, so I'm not going to chop this one up, and it's also branded with Coffee Skateboards. Okay? Catch you later.